Hey, thanks for joining me today to hear my musings. Spiritual musings based on things I've learned from guidance, things I've learned from tarot. And today I did a live YouTube. I do that every Thursday from 11:30 to 12:30 Pacific Standard Time, a live where you can hop on my YouTube channel and get some questions answered. I'm happy to do that. I do that free on Thursdays. I do it on Mondays too, by the way, on Facebook in the afternoons from 2:30 to 3:30 Pacific Standard Time. Why am I mentioning this today? Because the general reading today was of the tarot reading that I do, always do in the beginning, a general reading, was about what to do when we're overwhelmed. That theme, that global theme for all of us, feeling overwhelmed at times, feeling anxious, what to do with that energy, what can help that energy. And tarot's guidance today not only talked about that feeling of being overwhelmed, not feeling settled in our bodies, not able to connect with ourselves better and therefore the outer world better. And one of the suggestions that tarot guidance made was that it was important to have gratitude in those moments. That gratitude is a way to focus and to how do I want to say it? To look at the positive maybe a better way to say it. In other words, when we have gratitude, whether it's about a specific thing, and it doesn't have to be a specific thing, right? It can be gratitude just because I'm breathing today. And I don't know if that's a big thing or a small thing, but it's a thing. And for sure, breathing is something that can take us right into the moment. And sometimes that's all we need to do is to remember. I mean, that we can be, not to remember, but to feel less overwhelmed, because gratitude can bring us back to ourselves and help us to feel grounded. Maybe for you, you have gratitude for something. Maybe petting your dog. You're grateful that that brings you back to an awareness of being in the moment, and all of that anxious energy or feeling overwhelmed can dissipate even for a little while. So that was one suggestion from tarot guidance today about how to deal with being overwhelmed in the moment. It doesn't change being overwhelmed, maybe in general. It's not maybe something that is going to affect you 3 minutes after you are grateful, but we all deserve to take a break from that feeling, and gratitude is definitely one way. And then during the hour that I was on, I thought, let me check in. I love the Osho Zen deck, which is, if you're not familiar with it, it's the Osho Zen Tarot. I love that deck, and I don't read it like a traditional tarot deck, even though it is. I read it more like a oracle deck, and I picked this card just in the middle of the deck, just, picked it out of, just, it wasn't even the first card on the top. It was in the middle of the deck, and it's the inner voice card. And the inner voice card, when I read and it's the number 2, so it's a major card in traditional tarot. If you know tarot, this is the High Priestess in the traditional deck, the Rider-Waite deck. So if you're familiar with that inner voice, that inner vision, has to do with trusting ourselves, listening to ourselves. And in the Osho Zen book that I read verbatim, it again talked about how we can get overwhelmed when we listen to too many voices and not trusting our own self. And so there again, that theme of being overwhelmed, getting needing to figure out how to deal with being overwhelmed. And one suggestion that Osho Zen had was to become silent. That through silence, through sitting, we can just be in the moment. And that was a second way to deal with that feeling of agitation. And then I thought, okay, let me pick another card, and I love an oracle card, and I love the medicine cards. This is a book from the 80s, so this is going to be an old cover. I'm sure I've had this book since it first came out. And it's the medicine cards by Jamie Sams and David Carson. I love this book, and it's animal totems, and I picked also from the middle of the deck, and I got squirrel. And squirrel also talked about, squirrel is, how many times you're driving down the street and you see a squirrel and you stop because even though that squirrel is out of your way, because that squirrel is so that energy is so frenetic sometimes in a squirrel that that squirrel kind of goes back and forth. We all know this. We've all had this experience. So they again, I picked a card that talked about a frenetic kind of energy and a way that we can get caught up in that anxiety and that overwhelmed and that frenetic kind of energy. Squirrel brings that medicine to us, but they had a third suggestion for what to do when we feel that. And the third suggestion from the medicine card book today was to take action, to actually maybe do something to help stop feeling overwhelmed. They suggested things like if your house is feeling cluttered, come on, take some of that stuff to, Goodwill or a thrift store. If you're feeling that you are anxious about the future and what's going to happen, climate change upsetting you, maybe do something about that. Maybe write a letter to your senator, or that's my suggestion. I don't know. But, to actually take action to help in the moment feel like at least you're doing something toward stopping that level of anxiety and feeling overwhelmed. So I just wanted to share that with you today because I thought it was very woo woo and no coincidences, no surprise that three different ways that I sought for advice today came up, all three with this theme of being overwhelmed, but more importantly, three ideas for how to feel better. And just to summarize, one was to be silent, be quiet, maybe meditate. That's always a good idea. And that doesn't mean hard work, it just means sit. Sit with yourself. 5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes, just be here now so that you can really hear, that love for self that you have. Because when we're overwhelmed and anxious, a lot of that love doesn't get through. And it's me with me, right? You with you. So what better teaching of love than that, really, right? So being silent. The second way was to have gratitude, to remember the positives, to remember that there's something in my life that can switch my focus so that being overwhelmed, it doesn't take all of my focus. And gratitude in general has a way of bringing us back to center. It really does take us out of ourselves and our own issues and problems and helps us to kind of like look at the larger picture. And then the third way, according to the medicine cards, is to do something. Take action on what you're overwhelmed about if it's possible. And if you can't take action on what it is specifically you're overwhelmed by, maybe take action in another part of your life. Their suggestion, if you've been looking at that pile of papers for a while, maybe go through them, because once you take action and throw some of those pieces of paper away that you'll never reread or it's just too late to do anything about, we can feel less overwhelmed by that pile. All right, well, that's it. Just thought that was a really interesting thing that happened today, right? I mean, I'm not going to say it was weird. We all know that these things, messages can happen in threes. And I, for myself, have come to believe that if a message is repeated over and over, it's worth paying attention to. So thanks for paying attention to me today. I appreciate your time here, and leave your comments. I would love to hear what you have to say about this, your experience, things that you do for yourself when you're feeling overwhelmed. You inspire me. Your suggestions might help me, might help others. Feel free to let us know how you cope. All right. Love you all. Thanks again for listening to my musings today. Bye.